Good morning.
Good morning.
Here we are.
Yeah.
I've been in more of a practice lately of calling in my energy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you do that? I do that on like a daily, multiple times a day lately.
Tell me what that looks like for you.
For me, like I imagine it like little filaments of light, like energy strands, or you could imagine it like strings, and just calling it back in, because we connect to electronics, to people, like, you know, everything every day. And sometimes when I feel like my energy is a little scattered or depleted, it's like, oh, let's just call that back in. And I just do it with my breath, and then I send out, you know, with the intention, sending out anything that's not mine on my exhale. And I feel like that always helps to coolly have a clearer and cleaner container.
Yeah. What if we do that right now?
Well, we just did.
Oh, we just did. You were describing it. I want to actually do it, embody it.
So embody it?
Yeah, lead us through it.
So taking a deep breath in, just imagining any energy that is out in the external world that you have given, and pulling it into your body, disconnecting it from all those places, from people, from children, from electronics, any parts known and unknown, just calling it back into your body, reclaiming all of your energy, pulling it in. And then with your breath on the exhale, you can send out any energy that's not yours, that's in your field, known and unknown, just giving it back, letting it go, seeing it leave your body. And just taking time to just feel that clear conduit that you are, that clean and clear conduit, owning all elements that are you, claiming your power, claiming your energy, owning it, all parts of you.
I love that it can be that simple.
I know, super simple.
Yeah. Sometimes I want like this big ritual, like, and it's like
breath of fire,
which I love. Speaking of, this last weekend was fantastic. Yeah.
It was so amazing.
Yeah. So Amanda co-facilitated a shamanic mini medicine wheel with Danielle Bryan.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to be there and participate, and it was an amazing weekend.
Yeah, there's not a lot of words, I feel like, which, you know, usually when we have soulful experiences, putting words on those experiences are very challenging. Yeah, it was stunning. What I think is, especially for me being on not the other side, but for me not participating in the class, it was fascinating to witness everyone coming in, you know, noticing their energy and the transformation that happened with every single person. What, you know, when they left, they were, I felt like everyone was different. Everyone was changed.
Oh, yeah.
For the better.
Yeah.
Would you say that was your experience?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in fact, I wanted to ask you this. I think this might be fascinating to talk about, because we went out to coffee one morning, and there's a guy behind us that struck up a conversation, and when, you know, we had kind of walked forward, you're like, he's got this block in his energy field, and and you ended up having a conversation with him about it. But what do you see? Like, what is that process for you when you read someone's energy, you notice it? Like, what is your interaction? What is that? How do you internalize that and make sense of it?
That is a great question, and thanks for asking. And I'm sitting here, well, first, one of the pieces that I feel like has kind of held me back in general with opening up to my gifts is the fear of, when I first learned shamanic medicine, especially practitioner, as a shaman, you track energy. So when somebody comes in for a session, I will track their energy, and we're taught very carefully not to do that unless we're in session. And so I've carried that so strongly that I've always been so worried of not, like, almost closing me off so that I don't track energy, which there's that fine nuance between just noticing and actually tracking somebody intentionally. And so I've had more of a practice several months ago, and I think I mentioned on a previous podcast, where I call in my spirit guides, and I trust that if I'm ever needed, that something will call my attention. And then even more recently, I'm allowing myself to be available for whatever is in the best and highest good of any interaction. So that guy, to answer your question, for me, I don't see it in the sense of seeing it. It's really hard to explain. It's a knowing.
Yeah.
So you have the different clairs, like the clairsentience, the clairaudience, the clair. There's like 4 clairs. Yeah, voyance,
like
and I don't. So it's clear seeing, knowing, like it's
hearing and feeling.
So I'm a very sensory and knowing. Like those are 2 of my strongest, and it is so subtle. But for whatever reason, I think partly because we were in that space of timelessness and in the energetics, and as a co-facilitator, I'm holding space. And really for me, I loved seeing how spot on my tracking was with different things that we were experiencing. So I was in that.
Yeah.
And so then it was just a noticing, and it was a very strong hit of, he has this block and he really needs to move it. And so then it opened up a conversation to...
When you asked him before you said anything, hey, would you be open to me sharing this, right? So,
well, I said, have you ever done any energy work, is actually how I opened it. And again, that comes back to that trusting place. And that's the piece that I feel like I'm continuing to work on and develop of, if this is showing up, it's because his higher self is asking.
Yeah.
And it's not like, oh my God, you have something wrong with you. In fact, it ended up unfolding in like kind of a cool way. If you remember, he was showing a picture of his purple hair.
Yeah.
And the way this picture, it like illuminated his crown chakra. It looked like he had this halo.
Yeah.
And I told you, we sat down and I'm like, so I just got this hit. And I don't know if I should say anything or not. And then he sat right by us.
Yeah.
And
I'm like, yeah, you should say something.
He's right here.
Yes.
So yeah, then I just said and offered. I asked him if he'd done energy work. I said what I do, and I gave him my card and just said, I noticed that you have a block on the left side of your head. And I said, it may be useful to go to and have an energy healing session. I'm happy to do it, or you can find someone else. And then I offered also that he could just do it in his meditation practice and imagine that picture of him.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's like those little subtle things, right, that we run across. But it's not like I was playing in his energy field a ton.
Right, no. But I feel like there was enough that had connected us. Like, he struck up a conversation. We talked for several minutes. He's wearing, he had like 12 crystals on his neck and a gorgeous amber piece on his finger. So obviously it's a piece of his truth, he's open to it. And it was a beautiful converation too of the current affairs and how we get to choose how we're engaging with the shit show the world is in, and we get to make that conscious choice. So he obviously was speaking a more conscious language, Yeah. He wasn't one that was saying, get your fucking mask on! Which we did run into some of those.
Oh man. So, I know. Yeah. I feel like I have been pulling out a little bit of the scenes, so to speak. The closer we get to election, things get more intense. And I feel like I've been pulling back. And part of it's just being in presence. When we had Holly that was channeling, I thought that was a really great piece that came through of really being completely in the moment and trusting that in the moment, if you need to do something, you'll be given that inspiration, and you'll actually know things that you didn't know you knew.
Right. And disengaging from the media circus, disengaging from the political dialogue, and really tuning in to what you need. And she talked a lot about making your home your sanctuary. And really fortifying it with those resources that help you feel grounded and connected. And it's like, if there's a hurricane down the road, why the fuck would you go towards the hurricane? It's like, stay in your safe space and take care of yourself and take care of your family and take care of your energetics and trust that you'll be okay.
Yeah. Well, and we've talked about this before, it's that piece of letting go of that fear aspect of not knowing what's coming, and nobody can know really what's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, even the people that claim that they know don't really know, because at any given time, energetics can shift. And that's the same thing with, this brings up an interesting topic around psychics, and something that I just had a recent friend that just got engaged, and she's like, had I listened to a few psychics, I would not be here right now, and she's blissfully happy. And this is the same, I mean, it's along the same lines of, if we can just stay in the present moment and knowing our intuition and trusting more and more in that we will be guided and receive whatever we're needing for our family. And if there is that ping of something feels unsettled, go into that. What do I need to feel settled? Do I need more water? Do I need more food storage? Do I need, whatever it is, so that you can have a little bit more peace of mind? Or maybe it's just some emotional, energetic work that you're needing that's just popping. But really, I feel like, and we've talked about this before, this time of year, this time in our cycle of our life is really a call to being more sovereign beings. And, the gift of 2020 is perfect vision, and that means perfect, quote unquote perfect, within our own beings. Of who are we, what are we, how do we connect to our divine selves.
That was one of my favorite pieces of the weekend, and I've worked with this a little bit, but the breath of fire meditation, because it takes you from the only way I can describe it is like a horizontal alignment on an earth plane into a vertical alignment of the abundance of the earth, the resource of the earth, and the abundance and resource of spirit, and our alignment in that flow, rather than a horizontal plane where you get pulled into lack or scarcity or abundance anywhere on that spectrum, right? You get pulled into the shit show, you get pulled into the drama, you get pulled into the illusions of our lives, right? And when we make that shift through breath work, like breathing into those lower chakras and really opening them and intentionally connecting our life force down to the planet and drawing that planet energy up, that earth mama energy up, and then up to source and pulling that in and really seeing that we're connected. That is that whole search for oneness, right? And oneness isn't outside of us, it's always within. It's always within. So I loved that.
And I feel like that piece right there, and I spoke to it on that last day, that was one of the hardest things for me to do when I first was learning it, that breath of fire and doing the cycles. And yet it's become my biggest asset. Like especially when I'm off or out, if I can just spend, even if it's 5 minutes, doing that to where I'm rooted and I'm connected and I can see and feel that prana to that channel that I have, and it's a clear conduit. It pulls me out of the fight or flight. It puts me into the now moment, and gets me a lot more present in my life to where I'm not as easily pulled into those pieces that you were speaking to. Yeah, it's a super easy, quick practice, and it's become one of my biggest tools that I use for sure. I do love it. What was your biggest aha, or what was the thing that out of everything that we did, because we did a lot of embodied somatic experiences, which is one of the pieces that I do love about shamanism. And I love that you shared with me earlier that it's taking a lot of these different pieces you've learned in other places and kind of all pulling it into one. But I'm curious, what was your, I don't know, either the biggest aha or your biggest oh my God, that was so amazing. Do you mind sharing?
No, not at all. It was fascinating to me, like you said. I've learned all these different modalities across time in my work of healing, both my own self and as a practitioner, facilitator for other people. And it brought everything together in a container that has ritual, ceremony, and a deep-rooted lineage. It gave it a language, right? A common language across the board. And so there was family constellation work and the sand painting work. That's you work with objects and you blow density, like when I say density, like heavy emotions that you're feeling or a block that you're feeling, you blow it into a stick or a rock, and then you put it in a contained energetic field, and then you allow intuition to move these pieces around so it can find a better flow. That's powerful.
That's on the earth.
Yeah, that's on the earth. And so the earth energy is supporting it and holding it and mulching the density and resourcing you through that process. So that was awesome. I love any work that's empowering, and I felt the whole weekend was all around giving us tools in our own healing, right? Anyone can do this. Anyone can learn how to tap in and track their energetic field. Anyone can learn how to breathe and be more conscious in their lives. Anyone can learn how to breathe density into their kuyas, into these rocks that are medicine rocks. And I've always thought that everything has a gift and a lesson, always. And that was the language that was presented, like, how has this benefited you? Well, for me, that's the language is, what's the lesson here? You know, and what are the gifts? Okay, what have I taken from this to become a better person? But overall, probably the most impactful thing was the message that truth will always be in the moment, and the gift will, like, it always, what you need will always come in the moment, like presence, how important presence is. And that actually was the card I drew on our last day when we did our closing ceremony, which was so beautiful. It was miracle, and the miracle is in the moment. Like, everything will be given in that moment, and there's no scarcity in the present moment ever. So that was super affirming.
How was it to receive rights?
Oh, it was beautiful. That touched my soul so deeply. And like I said, everything was so familiar on a soul level. It's like, this is a coming home. It's a remembering of who I am and who I've been, and bringing timelines and lifetimes together into a unified experience. That's the only way I can describe it. In fact, when I met one of your friends at one of, I think it was the summer solstice fire ceremony, she looked at me, she's like, "Are you a Mesa carrier?" And I was like, not yet this time. I'm sure I have been, because it feels like such a deep piece of who I am, and to work with that sacred medicine that is so rooted in a lineage supported by elders and tradition, and such a sacredness, you know. It was really beautiful.
That's awesome.
It was really beautiful.
I think one of the pieces that I keep being reminded of through this medicine is I've been deepening my shamanic medicine that I hold, is the rituals of ritual, the sacred rituals, and how important that is. In fact, you have me my notebook that's right there. I remember taking a note, something that Danielle said just struck me about rituals. That is something that has got. Do you remember?
Out of your limbic brain.
And there was
that what it was? It takes you out of your limbic brain into your neocortex. Which is your God brain.
Which is fascinating, right? And again, it's something that's been lost in our everyday society, in our worlds that are just moving constantly. The sacred rituals and ceremonies. And, you know, I know people that are religious, they have different types of ceremonies that they go into. And, but what I really loved about this is it's so earth oriented. In fact, when Danielle called in Sacred Space at the very beginning, I was so overwhelmed by, excuse me, I'm like at the tail end of a cold, and so my voice is still a little crackly, but in the north we call in the medicine men and women, and she called in the medicine men and women of the land, and it was so palpable, and so, like, I started crying because it was so just like, yes, these medicine men and women are like, yes, you're here, yes, let's do this, and they held us so sweetly in the space the whole time. And you know, it's like, it was a good remembering too, and I brought this up in class, with how often we're taking from the land and we don't give back, and these are different things that we do to give back, whether it's through fire, through even our breath work, you know, we are connecting to Pachamama and to God or to the sun, or anyway, and how deeply important that is. And it is just this lost sense that we've gotten away from. And really what I get excited about of the times that we're in right now is it is a destruction of the old that has been prevalent for so long. And like we've talked about before, destruction has chaos. But then once all of that happens, then we're sitting with this stillness, almost the still point, the 0 point of now where do we go from here. And this is why I believe we're on a quote-unquote ascension path to having more of a peaceful planet, because all of us are moving into more of this sovereign self, and you know, the sacred rituals. How do I do my meditation? How do I connect deeper with these elements that are within me, which I I feel like is such a, like I get excited that my kids are moving more into that's going to be my children's children's children. You know, the world that they'll have is more of that nourishing, giving, peaceful planet, because we're more in communion with our planet and not separated from it.
Yeah. That was one thing that I loved about the weekend, is this idea of the paradox of truths. And in shamanism, you hold these different perceptual states, and there's the physical body, the emotional mental body, the spirit body, and then the energetic matrix. And you can look at events or experiences from all of these different vision points, and what can be true on the physical plane holds truth, and then you can look at it from a spiritual plane, and it's its own truth, but they're a paradox to each other, you know. And
all the incongruent
incongruent truths, that's the word, thank you. And being able to hold that, right, to me that is finding oneness in duality, right? Like both can be true, and we don't have to be so polarized into black or white thinking. Like there's a whole spectrum of truth out there. Of on this level, it is like right now politically, it's a shit show. On a higher level, it's in service of something bigger, something better, something, you know, the school systems right now, it feels like chaos. On something better, on a high, like I don't want to say higher, a different perceptual way of looking at it. It's like, oh, but this is a change that has to happen because it's no longer serving anyone, right? It's an old paradigm that was more of about indoctrinating people into a program, and now we need to be free thinkers. We need to be more sovereign beings and not a product of a system,
right?
You know, it's not going to work. It's already not working for our kids. I would almost say that's why there's more ADHD, ADD, because these kids don't fit these systems.
Box, right? The box that they're supposed to, this is our classroom, this is how we behave, this is what you need to do.
Yeah. It's all based around control and anyway.
Yeah.
So.
No, the thing that I wrote down was that ceremony re-engages the mystic within us, which I think that's partly why a lot of people that do step into shamanism have this deep calling to home, because and you brought that, we talked about this yesterday with how shamanic medicine, at least, you know, this is the Incan tradition that I hold of that lineage, but there's so many different types of shamanism, but at the end of the day, it's all this earth elemental energetics that you're connecting to, that all of us can track our lineage back to those places where things were a lot simpler in a lot of ways, and we were very rooted and connected into the earth. In fact, we depended on it for our survival. Yeah. And that's just been something that's lost, and I feel like most of us are craving that piece of how do I get back to that? How do I get back to that simplicity in my life where I do feel that softness, that connectedness, that supportedness, you know, because really when we are rooted and connected, we understand we are never alone. And I think it's
when you don't get swept up in the drama of the moment you can see the bigger picture, right?
What do you think of the triangle work? That's always my favorite.
Oh, I've been doing that for a really long time. Yeah, so the Triangle of Disempowerment, and seeing where we are. Are we in victim? Are we in perpetrator? Are we in rescuer? And I've done all three, right?
Well, we all do.
Yeah.
And that's always the kicker. And I know for me, I found, and I shared this again in class, when I first did it, I was sitting there listening to the teacher, and I'm like, I don't play all these roles. And then it was like, holy shit, I played every single one. And this is the gift that I was gaining from it. This is why I chose into each of the roles.
Again, it's that perceptual shift and you have to have that to get out of the triangle, right? Otherwise, you'll just go from victim to one of the other roles, like, you have to see, oh, there was actually gifts here. That's why this was in my life.
And then I'm stepping off.
I can step off. Yeah. And now I can see it for what it is, and I may choose to come in, I may choose not to, you know? It's just empowerment. So, I think blasting out of that black and white way of thinking, that's been probably the most liberating part of my journey.
I agree.
Yeah,
100%. Shifting perspective and learning that, and learning the triangle work with some of the stuff that was like so pushed me into more of this path that I'm living now, which means that there is no judgment. You know, I've had some interesting conversations with people over the years, and a few that I'm thinking of that, you know, they had a hard time sharing a few pieces, and yet there was no judgment. And on one aspect, of course, there's no judgment, like you're talking about. It's all part of the whole, and it's all part of an experience that we're choosing to have. And in these experiences, one in particular that I'm thinking of, you know, he had made some poor choices in his life that he was carrying, and he had a hard time sharing what it was. And yet, you know, it's like all of us have done some shitty things in our life, and yet it's taught us probably some of our biggest lessons. But yeah, that perspective and that paradigm shift just allows us to have more tolerance and understanding for people on their paths of whatever they're choosing.
Well, and I feel an interesting practice is if we have judgment, it's something to look at within ourselves. Like, where are we judging ourselves, really? Because if everything's a reflection back to us of us, then what am I holding here that I am not in right relationship with? You know, that I can start looking at, because we can't change anything outside of us, right? Yeah.
Right, and that's always an interesting nuance and kind of a kicker to all things that we experience, is that ability to look within of, okay, how am I attracting this in my life? And sometimes it is, and I think we may have talked about this before, but especially in the spiritual community, you can totally bypass and do all sorts of shit of, oh, well, that's just, you know, you're explaining that you're upset by something that I did. Well, that's just your perspective of me, and I'm not going to take any kind of accountability. And unfortunately, that happens if you're with lower vibrational beings that claim they're spiritual. That was a total judgmental comment.
I still think that's truth, though, Amanda. I do. I think our triggers are all 100% ours.
What I'm saying is the ability to be able to always look within is what I'm saying.
Right.
I wasn't finished with where I was starting. That it's always that piece of, like, that happens, and there's always that attraction and that affinity of why we're experiencing whatever it is that we're choosing to experience. And those pieces are hard to look at within of, oh my God, why did somebody just posted in this Human Resonance page that I follow, that she's like, I've noticed that a lot of us that are quote unquote light workers choose to be with narcissists, and I don't understand why. And then that's an interesting, you know, it's like, why would somebody who's a light worker choose to be with a narcissist? And it's like, oh my goodness, the sky is the limit as far as how many answers there would be to this, because everybody's on their own personal journey, regardless of whatever
your answer is why you're in that.
Anyway, she's like, I'm just trying to figure out what it is for the collective, and again, this comes back to just letting, like, it's almost just this letting go of all of those things that we think define us, and just being completely present with what is.
And stay in your own fucking lane, right? Like, it's not really any of my business where anyone else is at. It's my field, and it's relational. For me, it's relational. That's my language. So however someone comes in and I'm affected by that interaction, that's mine. It's not theirs.
Right, and we have a tendency to be like, oh, they made me feel like this, or they made me...
No one can make you feel a damn thing.
Especially with family dynamics.
Yeah.
And which is tricky. And the more you learn tools, and more, I mean, I've navigated it, you've navigated it, the more we really come into aligning with ourselves and come into that sovereignty. Yeah, we may notice things and things ping, but it's like, well, that's my stuff. Okay, deep breath, sending that back out. I'm not, you know, whatever that is.
But I mean, there's that fine line about boundaries, right? Like,
oh, 100%.
Yeah, like that's different, but projecting something on you, this is yours, you need to shift that. It's like, I'll look at my piece of it, and this is my boundary.
Right.
And we've talked about that in the past, so probably don't want to step into that again, but
I don't know. I don't know that everybody always listens to every single episode.
They don't hang on every word we say.
God damn it.
we're fan fucking tastic. They should, right? No, I'm teasing. No, boundaries is a really important practice, and it took me.
Yeah.
I'm still figuring that out, especially like my role of mom. What do those boundaries look like? My role in a relationship with a significant other, what does that look like? Parents, like friends, all that.
Yeah. Always those nuances.
Yeah. So I did a really fun thing yesterday.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I worked with one of my friends. She's a Feng Shui practitioner.
Oh yeah?
And Feng Shui is I believe it's Chinese practice of creating spaces where energy flows. And I believe it works with the directions and elements, but I don't know.
I'm almost
100%.
positive
Yeah.
it does, yeah.
So she's been, she came in as a massage client, and then we've done energy work, and then we've become good friends. And so now we're trading, and I had her come in because I am a very sentimental being and love to hold on to things with the idea of I may need it someday, or whatever.
What if? Yeah.
Whatever. And I love books. Like, books are my lovers. I love them so much. And so my bedroom, I cannot believe how many books I had in my bedroom. Like, everywhere. And opening up some shared space in my living, my personal space to a significant person that's come into my life. So it was this perfect opportunity, right? And the thing that blows my mind is I had already had this appointment set before any of this came in, and it was like, of course this showed up in support. The timing was perfect. So she came in and we got shit done like in an hour and a half.
Wow.
Cleared so much space, and I had a big, huge armoire in my living room that was just sitting there and kind of really heavy. And so we opened it up, and it became like a bookshelf with decorative pieces and books, and now it opens up that whole living space where it's more inviting. And my son Liam, he's like, I love this part. This is my favorite part of the house. I want to sit and read books now. And I'm like, yay, because that's
so cool.
That's like up in the shared living space. I never go down in the basement, so that's like inviting him into that space.
Yeah.
And then clearing out space in my bedroom for shared space. It felt so good and so supportive. And it's amazing how just simple things can create a better flow of energy, right? And just, even though I love those books, they needed a different place to occupy space. And she said books are actions. Like, when there's a book in your space, it's an inviting an action to pick it up and read it, right? And what is the energy you want in your bedroom? Is that the space that you want action?
You mean I should clear up all the books that are on my nightstand of the layers of, okay, I'm reading this one, and then this one, and then this one, and then this one?
I know. And I did choose to keep a few right on my bedstand, because I do like to read in bed, or nightstand. But I didn't need 50 books. There's probably 50 books in my bedroom.
No.
So, that was amazing. And then we went through my closet a little bit, and again, clothes. I haven't worn it in 6 years, but I may have that one time. And so to have an objective person, I'd put on this jacket, and I maybe wore it once, and it was really cute. And she goes, yeah, it's really cute, and it's a bit dated, like the buttons, and would you really wear it? No, okay. And so I could start letting go of, because objects hold energy, right? Everything holds energy. So being more conscious of what we're having in our spaces and the energy it holds.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a beautiful practice of clearing so that energy can flow and we can be less cluttered.
I know. If I'm kind of in a mood and I have nothing to do, okay, what am I going to go organize or declutter today? And it always will shift, even though sometimes I don't really want to do it. In fact, I just went through and did a storage room that is just shitty. Now it's not. And it does. It is so crazy how connected it is to our emotional, mental, physical bodies. And it does allow. Yeah, one of the women in the circle from this past weekend, shared that she's like, it's like we just cleaned out a bunch of closets, this weekend. And it's like, yeah, that's a really good analogy. Yeah. And when you clean stuff out, whether it's physically or emotionally, mentally, you make room for something else to come in, which is fantastic. Because if we're constantly cluttered in our life in general, whether it's thoughts, whether it's in our physical homes, in our emotional body, there's no room for these other pieces, these gifts to be able to come in. And so it is a really cool, I love that you did that. And it is fun that the timing worked out so perfectly.
Well, there's so many synchronistic things happening right now in my life, which is scary sometimes. And I find myself like second guessing, and then I'm like, no, I've done a lot of conscious work to call this in here. So why the fuck am I getting in my own way? Get the fuck out of my way.
Because we're humans, and on some level we've been programmed that things have to be hard, that it doesn't just come easy.
That was a huge thing we worked with this weekend, right? Or last weekend.
Yeah, and it's just a part of our programming, even collectively, that's asking to be uprooted and dismantled. Things have to be hard, and in order to achieve something I have to bust my ass to get it and sacrifice my health, my happiness, in order to receive this thing, and then I'm actually really not happy when I receive it, and we get,
I don't think I deserve it.
Yeah, and wait, did that just really come in that easily? And I think I mentioned this when I had that experience where I'm like, holy shit, did I just manifest it? And yet that's where we're moving to, where we can manifest that quickly. And part of it is what you're saying. It's reprogramming our belief systems and reprogramming our DNA and that lineage holding of things have to be hard because that's how it was, but it's not how it's going to be, and we're working on moving that and releasing it. And so it's that beautiful reminder. I know I've had a few different things when you're talking about the synchronicities that I have been trusting more and more in timing of I was going through a bunch of health things, and I noticed that my client practice totally dropped, and I went into judgment around it. Why don't people, and then I had an instant thought of, no, this is clearing space so you can take care of this other piece. And once I cleared that, took care of that piece, all of a sudden my client practice jumped right back up. And so I'll notice, and I've definitely been in a place of more flow, where just allowing things to come in when they're going to come in and just trusting the timing. And it is such a beautiful practice to be in, because there is that, it gets you out of the judgmental mind, which judgment stops you from any kind of movement.
Creates separation.
And there's just that, it's a lot more of it's a hummingbird medicine. It's that sweeter medicine. Hummingbird, when it gets called to take that flight across the oceans, it doesn't stop to go, I wonder where I can get food along the way. It just trusts, and it moves, and it goes and flies this unimaginable flight across the oceans to wherever it's been called to go next, and it just trusts. And that's definitely, hummingbird's one of my totem animal, actually. And so I've been pulling that in more and more and more, the joy, the receiving, the trusting, the stillness in motion. And
that's why I keep coming back to, why can't it be easy? Why
that's what we're all asking for. So why can't it? And we're just in a practice of dismantling.
I've been sitting with that, and I've got the answer where that comes from.
Oh, let's hear it.
Wise Valerie.
Oh, mighty wise one, share us your wisdom. I'm not being on a pedestal, just so that we're not
I'm already there. No, I'm kidding. Back to the belief, the story that we were created as a slave race to support the few that have been in power. If you want to keep people enslaved, why wouldn't you put a program in that it's hard to have what you want? You always have to work for it. You're never going to be worthy of it.
You're never quite there.
You're never quite there.
There's something always wrong.
Keep going, keep going, keep going. Put your shoulder to the wheel, push along. Throw up. And now we're seeing it for what it is, and shifting to no, I can do that horizontal shift to the vertical shift of abundance, and I'm connected to earth energy, I'm connected to source, and I'm my own creator of my life. Out of the triangle I step. No longer will I be there.
That tipping point that we talked about a little bit with the whole consciousness of the planet, that it actually doesn't take a whole lot of us to raise our frequency enough to have that tipping point. And this goes back to those timelines of thinking, some people who believe that they know what the future holds. It's like, it depends, because if we all really start, not all, but a significant amount of us raise our frequency and our vibration enough, it'll completely tip the timelines and shift where we're going as a planet and as a collective, which is a really, really cool and fascinating thing.
Did you ever watch The Dark Crystal?
That's one of my friend's, Teal's, favorite movies, and I'm like, oh, I should watch it, and I never did.
I just keep seeing, so there's this, I think they're the skaties or the scatties, something like that. They're these kind of crab-like creatures that are really scary, and they've got these big shells, and then there's these old wise ones that kind of shuffle along, and they're polarized versions of each other. And I'm blowing the end for you. What's that called?
Oh man, you're ruining spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, yeah. At the end they merge together and they become these conduits of light that are in a circle, and they're connected to heaven and earth, and it shifts the whole...
Oh, what? People of shadow and light got together and became one?
Right, I know.
How to work together.
Right. Well, within yourself too, right? So it's this idea that when you're so polarized within yourself, you can't find that oneness within.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know.
Fun. I love being in this space. I love being in the energetics. I love being in the medicine, especially with shamanic medicine. You know, and I'm putting my own nuances on it, but I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just stunning work. It's beautiful work. It's beautiful knowings and holdings, you know, of... And I've had recent conversations where it's like, I remember being in those places of being afraid to look at my shadow, of being afraid to go in those pieces that needed healing because I may never come out. And I'm so grateful I did obviously come out. And for me, I'm so grateful that I'm on the other side, that I've done all this work, because it is work to clear it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, maybe we were the generation that chose to come in to clear these old programs, these old patterns that we have been carrying down through our lineage for so long, so that our children could then create a new world in their children, and that is more of a peaceful place. And if that's what the call was that we answered, I'm happy to do it. I mean, we've been doing it.
Well, that's been my soul's call,
yeah.
Right? I feel like that's why I've been on this path. It was really fascinating to me. We did a journey this weekend, and in the journey, like an old story came up, and I'm like, fuck, why, what,
I looked at that.
Yeah. Even in the past year of family constellation work, but it was a different layer of it.
Yeah.
And the clearing work was more in relational to family stuff. My mom came in, my dad came in, and had this conversation of, again, what's the gift and what's the learning there. And then the patriarchy came in form of an old Mormon bishop, you know, and doing some clearing work there personally with the patriarchy. And then any personal work we do is also a collective piece, right? I thought that was fascinating because I've done some archetypal work before in other spaces, and to have that show up in such a powerful way, that was really beautiful experience. Yeah.
Well, it probably moved quicker, and it was didn't have as much of those grips. I would have.
It wasn't as dense.
Yeah.
That's what I do love about this. You don't have to go into the trauma to heal the trauma, right?
And sometimes you do, depending on what you need, how you need your healing.
Mm-hmm.
But like you're talking about it, that's one of the things that I've noticed as the layers come up. Even though there is that part of us that's like, are you serious? This is coming up again. I've done so much. I just recently actually had a session trying to clear out this cold that I had gotten. And it was energetics from when my mom was pregnant with me and my brother died. And I cannot tell you how many sessions I've done around it. And so there is that instant judgment of, what, serious? Like this? Mm-hmm. And yet it's just another layer. But it's a less emotional, less gripping, less anchored, hooked. You know, it does move quicker, and it's like, okay, all right, what other layer are we moving of this? All right, let's just do it and get her done. And I think we forget oftentimes, especially in our spiritual progression that we're all trying to accomplish or achieve, we chose to be human.
Yeah.
We chose to be in this physical body and this beautiful earth. And again, that's why I think the gift of presence is so important to ourselves. Of being in the now moment, of being in the physical and not disassociating with our physical bodies and always going into the energetics, or always, you know, tripping and wanting to do journeys because it feels good there. It's like, well, it also feels good here when you become more not acclimated, but more in Aini with all the, you know, the mental, emotional, the spiritual, all the energetic bodies. The physical body is an extremely important one. And I know for me, I've been having more appreciation and more love and acceptance of these pieces that for me have kind of always, you know, especially as women, and it's not just women, but all the pieces of how I don't look good enough, or I have this too much of whatever, yet my body has been one of the biggest vehicles to learning my gifts. It is because I am very somatic with what I feel. Even I'm noticing for a long time I would have uncontrollable shaking that would come in, and I've always tried to figure out what that is. and different emotions, different feelings that I've felt over the years that have really plagued me. And I'm understanding more and more it's just my shaking is actually moving in different conversations. I'm recognizing that I'm kind of a conduit to shifting the frequency and the vibration of whatever conversation's happening. And so for me, it's just understanding that more and then breathing through it. Because it's raising the frequency. It's another form of moving density of whatever's happening. And then I will, every once in a while, I will get this disgusting, really gross emotion that ever since I was little that will come in, that I cannot tell you for how long. Is it this? Is it this? Is something wrong with me? Am I feeling a dark spirit? And I'm tuning in to where that's actually a collective energy of sexual shadow, because it has a very sexual.
Yeah, it's all coming to the surface.
Yeah, that comes into different spaces and actually will come in different healing spaces sometimes. And for me, it's just recognizing and then just, sending it out. And, anytime there's more light that's coming to the planet, there's also more shadow that's going to come up to meet it. And that's where we get to be even stronger conduits of understanding, that doesn't have any more power over us than we do. And being very respectful in how we work with it, just like we would be if we were walking down a dark alleyway as a single woman, being careful and noticing what your surroundings are. It's the same thing in the energetic matrix that we sit in, of really recognizing that, understanding how powerful we are, and utilizing all parts of who we are, especially the human part. There's really nothing to do, and there's nothing to be done other than just being, and living life.
Yeah, I mean, I still hold to the idea that this is the point, like being in a human body on this planet, experiencing full spectrum is the point. And like, as you were talking, I was thinking about Anna, grandmother of Jesus, and Yeshua, and I love that my relationship with him has shifted. Like, for a long time, it was like, yeah, that Jesus guy, bye-bye, like, no place in my belief system. And to be open to a different aspect or a different story of who he was.
That he was human?
Yeah, that it was 100% human. And he learned how to raise his vibration, not to separate from his human body, but to actually ascend with his body. And what if on an intergalactic piece, that is where we're in service, is to learn how to be so embodied and hold a really high frequency that we can do transportation, or is that what it's called?
We can translate, like we can ascend with our physical bodies when we die.
What's it called when you're in two places at one time?
Oh,
teleportation. Bilocation and teleportation. And
bilocation is sending your energetic body out.
Yeah.
So you look like you're somewhere else, but your physical body is in.
And yes, all those things.
All of those things.
Yeah.
So here's a question I've been sitting with, because I feel like for me and my personal journey, I've been making more and more peace. Like, it feels more in alignment. Yes, human body, physical, being present and in the now moment. And if we chose to be in this earth at this time in the 3D, which is what we chose to be in, and this whole idea of actually ascending the planet, like, that part is catching me a little bit. Like, yes, I love the idea that we're moving into more of a 5D, because that is a world that I'd rather my children and their children and their children to live in, that is more full of abundance and peace and all of these aspects. But then it kind of takes you, especially when I was sharing a little bit of this idea that on a soul level, choosing to incarnate in different time frames and different 3D, 4D, 5D, different planets, I'm Arcturian or I'm Palladian or whatever, because those were different experiences that we chose to have on a soul level as an individuated soul, choosing all these experiences, because then once we have all of that, then we go and create, let's say this is true, we go and create our own world, and then we're actually the source of that world. If that's the case, then if we chose into this 3D matrix to understand and learn 3D lessons, why would we be moving it to 5D?
But
You're smiling. Why are you smiling?
Because I'm having some big thoughts.
I know.
They make me so happy.
Oh, you're having big thoughts of making you happy.
Yes, because I'm a big thinker, and that makes me happy. So what I see when I look at it is I see the chakra system, right? And we've been moving through lifetimes on this planet from a very root chakra, survival, tribal living, tribal mentality. Then we move up to the second one, like, oh, we're creators. We don't have to just survive. We get to create, and we get to start putting expressions of ourselves out in the world. And then we shifted from that to power paradigms, right? Third chakras, like figuring out through experience, through humanity, through 3D bodies, our power paradigms. And some are like, I need all the power in the world, and the other spectrums, I have no power, and playing on that field. And I feel like now we're moving from that third chakra up into the heart, into our interconnectedness, into our unconditional love, into that expression of what it means to be human, right? And I just feel like maybe this ascension idea is consciousness raising through the chakras, which I asked Danielle once, it was in that Saturday, it's Soulful Saturday that you guys did, because she was talking about these different levels of dimension, first, second, third, fourth. And I'm like, do those correspond to the chakras? Because it's interesting to me, and they do in a way. Like 4D is the heart level, 5D is more of throat chakra, 6D is more of the third eye, 7D is more of the crown, and maybe these, we pull it so far outside of ourselves, and it's really not outside of ourselves, right? Because it keeps coming back to oneness, and oneness is within ourselves. We can't find it within ourselves, we're never going to find it anywhere else. The sense of belonging, that was a big thing that came for me this weekend, is I belong. I belong, I have my place. And no one can make that true for me, and no one can take that away from me. It's my own owning. It's my own stepping into. So this idea of like becoming our own source, we already are our own source. We already are creators. We are already we're creating our world right now. So it's not something we're ascending to, we're already in practice of it. And it's just like, okay, where am I? Like maybe collectively we're moving through these chakras, but individually we can choose anywhere to play along that spectrum.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, or am I just rambling?
No, it makes sense. And it's just something that I've been sitting with, because the way my brain works is always wanting to understand pieces. And I had shared with you that whole idea that I had listened to as far as the different dimensions that we choose to live in, and for the greater whole kind of a thing. And I'm way dumbing this down and summarizing this for the sake of time, because there's a part of me that my God died a long time ago, and then I kind of had a different idea of what God was, or source. And for a while I've just been sitting with source and an unknown, like it's, when I call in source, it's Father, Mother, God, you who are known by 1,000 names, and yet are the unknowable one, or the unnameable one. And I agree with you. It is knowing the source that is within us, that it's not separate from us. And I think that's part of why there's not a whole identifying piece of when I connect my luminous cord to source, or I bring in that energy, it's not necessarily to a thing. It's to a collective thing that is collectively all us. And yet there's an aspect of me that believes that there is a quote-unquote higher source, in the sense of consciousness, of having that greater understanding and knowing of all things. And so this was something that I'm like, because somebody had asked, is it possible to have more than one source? And so this is why she was answering this question as far as her knowing. And so it was interesting to sit with. And again, part of me just likes to, I like to land somewhere and not kind of hover. And I'm okay hovering in the in-between of, I'm not sure. I'm okay not knowing as well. But there is that landing piece that I like to have until it moves, because I don't ever feel like my beliefs stay stagnant. Which, by the way, I've loved. That was something that I learned years ago, of this is my belief now, but it could change.
Yep.
I'm giving myself permission
Yep.
that it's not something that I have to hold on to forever and ever and ever
Yep.
and ever. That it's like, yeah, right now this is what I know until something, like this election, for example. I've had one belief for a while and now I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, and that, like, it doesn't hit my ego because there's an ego piece that normally would hit with
Right.
that.
I have to know.
Right.
And
Well,
I
that
need
means
to be
I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And it's like, it has
Yeah.
nothing to do with that. It's
Yeah.
just, we're constantly growing and evolving as humans and in this conscious experience. And
Yeah.
so then our understanding would be changing all the time. Our
Yeah.
collective is constantly changing. The holding of what truth is constantly changing.
Well, and I guess that's where I feel the unknowable one is constantly changing because we are its information.
Yeah, as it changes,
I know,
it grows, we grow, as we grow.
Right.
I say it, and then
I know, like,
doesn't.
it doesn't, you can't define
As God.
but yeah.
Yeah.
And it's nothing separate from us. That's the thing. I feel like that is the biggest illusion, is this idea of ascension to become source. We already are.
Well, and that's, for me, I'm not ascending with the idea of I want to become source. It's just more for me personally. I want to know and embody all aspects of myself in this physical life that I can.
Yeah.
You know, I want to grow my gifts. I want to feel like I'm of service.
Yeah.
To
In a
myself
conscious way, right? Yeah.
It was just one of those things that I'm like, that's an interesting idea. And yeah, that would be cool. Go create your own planet. It's like,
But what if you're already doing that? That's my point.
It's like the good place. Have you ever watched that?
Yes.
It's so cute.
Yeah, I love her.
Where you can't say, why can't I say fork?
Yeah, yeah. But that's my point, is we already are.
Yeah, okay.
And we are. We are.
In your belief system.
In my belief system.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone must accept. No.
Nope.
For me, that is the most empowered place I can stand.
Mm-hmm.
Is that I am already creating my world, if you will. And I'm an energetic vortex, and I call in all the players, I call in all the pieces based on my belief system, based on the frequency I hold. And then there's this interconnectedness, right? When someone else comes in to my vortex, or I go into theirs, or it's a meeting, then there's that interplay, right? But it's always reflecting back to me, and more information about myself. That's a microcosm to what I see as a macrocosm of what source is, right? That's what I feel. It's not some ascended being. It's a completion of everything and nothing at the same time. And as we learn to be more conscious and playful in that space, we are expressing our source self.
Yeah,
we are
in whatever
source.
expression that you're choosing to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that everything's part of the collective and part of the whole, and you know, like we talked about earlier, the paradox and the incongruent truth that we can hold, because all things are part of the whole. Everything is.
And everything's frequency, everything's vibration. And so if it's showing up in my world, it's informing me of a vibrational frequency I am holding. And if I don't like it, that's my work, is to shift that. And that's, I mean, circling back to the conversation earlier about synchronicities and timing and, you know, all of this, it's like, no, I can trust it. I can trust what shows up because I've become so empowered in how I'm creating my life. So I'm no longer in this triangle at all.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That right there, I think, is the kicker, especially for someone who's just starting out this work. And you know, when you say to someone who's had a really difficult life and things keep happening to them over and over again, that's actually all part of their creation. That is a very hard thing to unpack.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
So I'm just putting that out there for anyone who's listening that's like, are you fucking kidding me? It's like, no, we're not kidding, and everything we're saying is 100% true, and it is a hard thing to unpack, especially when you're in the thick of it and life just seems like one thing after another, after another, after another. And I think the advice, if that seems to be where you're at, for me, I would suggest, and I'll be curious what you would suggest to someone who's in that. I would suggest a few things. One, lighten your load. Whatever you've got going on every day, start doing less, because again, it goes back to that decluttering piece. If you're constantly just in movement, you're reacting constantly to life instead of being a co-creator. And that's where I would take a step back. Where can you remove things and take things off your plate so that you have more space for things? And then I would come into a practice somehow of whether it's working with someone or just doing your own breathwork meditation, some kind of piece to where you are consistently trying to do something to where you are getting more in touch with yourself.
Yeah, more embodied.
Yeah. What would you suggest?
Well, that's where the incongruent truths come in, right? And understanding that we're multidimensional beings, and what's true on a physical level can hold truth. It can hold truth. Like those who are victims, who have been a part of anything that feels violent or out of their power, that is true. And it's not
bypassing that.
We're not bypassing that.
Right.
And if that becomes our identity, that keeps us in that triangle. And it takes our power away again and again and again and again and again and again. And it's like, okay, is that the story you want to live? Or where can you take your power back? And so maybe working with a different view of it, like, is this an ancestral piece that I'm playing out again and again? Is this something I chose into to satisfy an understanding of what I've been a perpetrator, and now I understand what it feels like to be a victim. Like, in just shifting perspectives instead of identifying, so like I have to hold so tight to this. Where can I loosen that grip a little bit and start looking at things a different way to take my power back?
Yeah.
And it is about being in your body. That's where the truth lives. The truth lives in your body, and working with someone that can help you start tapping in and releasing those layers of density, those layers of trauma, those layers of hurt, so you can start moving into a more healed perspective and understanding and holding.
And a healed way of being.
Yeah. And the thing it does, or from my experience, those people who have been the perpetrator in my life, I can hold them in a different way. I can see a bigger, broader perspective of them, and it pulls me off the triangle again, rather than, oh, this person is always the bad guy. It's like, oh, you know what? This person had their own shitstorm that created this perpetual pattern of being, or you know what I mean? Or they were trying the best they can, like our parents, looking at my parents of, wow, they went through some really tough shit and they were doing the best they knew how. So I can hold them in a different way, and it creates a healing space, right?
Yeah, and if anyone listening is wanting to do more embodied triangle work to where you can understand this, you can reach out to me. I know a few people. I mean, I can help facilitate it. Val probably could as well.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, so reach out, because that's definitely a very quick way to understand what it feels like to be on a triangle, because it's a very somatic experience.
Somatic meaning you're feeling it in your body.
Yeah,
that's what somatic means.
So that way you can understand when that's like your identifier. Oh my God, I'm on the triangle. Okay, I don't want to do that. So I'm actually literally going to shift my feet or change my position in a chair so that I'm consciously stepping off of it, because a lot of it is just programming. And that's why I think for me, the first step is where can you declutter aspects in your life to where you can have more space to be able to see more consciously. And I guess maybe that's our ask, right? Is where can you lessen the load in your life if you feel like life is taking you over right now, so that you can be more available for other things in a positive way to come in.
Yeah, there's so many tools. Like what I learned this last weekend with using the kuyas, like a physical object that you can transfer density from your body, so you don't have to hold it anymore. You're giving it to Pachamama. Here, so you hold this for me.
So what that practice does is it moves the emotions out of the body. So whether it's anger, rage, sadness, pain, whatever it is, it takes it so your physical body's not holding it, and moves it out. And then there's that trusting of holding in the Pachamama energy, that earth energy, and her medicine of her being able to take that and work with you in that and moving it out.
Yeah, and then using the element of fire. Like fire is such a powerful tool.
Moon coming up
Yeah,
too.
so if you blow it into a stick,
Mhm.
burn it in the fire, and fire is alchemical. It takes something from one form to another, and then you can even use all the elements if you want to.
Yeah.
But starting with fire, like place it in the fire and trust that fire will alchemize it in your experience. And it can be that easy.
Right.
It can be that easy.
Yeah.
And just saying, I see this and I'm letting it go. And this is what I'm calling in to replace it. And then it becomes that practice of, here's my lesson. This is how it benefited me.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that came up for me this weekend was a story, and it's on an individual, familial, and collective level, is I'm not lovable.
Mm.
I'm not worthy of love, right? How many of us have felt that, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck, again. And it's like, okay, here it is. So working with that, what was the benefit? Well, it gave me excuse to play it small.
Right.
To not step into my power, not to be seen, not to be expressed in the world. Like, it gave me permission to do that. And is that really benefiting me? No.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in the past it was, but now I'm ready to let that go. So blow it in the stick, throw it in the fire.
Yeah.
Okay, what am I going to replace that? I'm stepping into my sovereignty. Blow it in the stick.
Mm-hmm.
I'm stepping into my power. I'm stepping into my expression, my voice, my creative expression in the world, and alchemize it with fire.
Right.
And then I feel like the kicker is the integration. If we don't integrate things, nothing changes.
Yep.
So consciously choosing that new pattern, that new level of engagement, right?
Yeah.
Because if we keep going back to the old thing of, oh,
What we
but
do.
I can't speak my truth, you're just going to keep getting more of the same.
Right.
So the integration piece is, I'm going to speak my truth.
Mm-hmm. Like, oh, wait a minute, I let go of that piece.
Yeah,
And
I'm not going to cycle back in. Yeah.
And it is that re-remembering piece. Like, okay, this is something I'm choosing to let go of consciously. I'm pulling this in. So in the brain mapping, I am remapping that place that used to be held, and I'm no longer choosing that thought, that pattern, that behavior.
Yeah.
And instead, I'm choosing this new holding.
Yeah.
And I may not know what the new behavior or new action is with it, but the new thought pattern is there.
Yeah.
And trusting that I'll know how to move into this new way of being, because a lot of times those new places are uncomfortable. We're very comfortable in our pain, our misery,
Yep.
those places. It's that holding on to it because it's familiar.
Yep.
And then that's that conscious choice. I'm letting go. I'm stepping into this. And then it's the 21 days of, okay, I'm consciously reprogramming this in my body and my brain.
And there's so many tools to help. Meditation, breath work, microdosing. That's been huge to rewire brains. Like they're finding more and more studies that using plant medicine can really take years of therapy and shift it, because it's a rewiring in the brain.
Yeah.
So it's all about intention, right? So there's so many tools, shamans, healers, and really we're our own best healer. So trusting ourselves in that process, journaling, like using kriyas, like things that we're blowing into.
So
and
when
burning.
she says kriya, she actually means kuyas, but she's talking about stones.
Kuyas,
and in the shamanic tradition, stones become your kuyas. They're your medicine because you work with them, you transmute the energy, and then they receive rights. You receive rights.
Yeah.
So just so that for reference. That's
Thank you. I'm like, kriya is something different. Thank you. Yeah, kuyas. I'm learning this new language. I love it.
Well, I always love our podcast time together.
Me too.
And we should probably wrap up. I think we did our ask, right? But just where can you free up space in your life? Because I think that's a pretty simple and actually really hard. When I was asked to do this, it was when I was running my business, and she actually said, only do 3 things. Outside of all the little, like I have to get my kids to school, like carpool, only have 3 things. And that was challenging for me. But guess
what do you mean 3 things?
Like 3 things that I'm going to do today. Like your to-do list. That's like
that keeps you so busy that you can't be present. Yeah.
Outside of that, I have to get my kids, yada, yada, yada. Outside of those, brush my teeth and go to the bathroom and eat. Outside of that, taking that off, only 3 things that you're doing. And when I was asked this a while ago, that's when it came in that it was time to shut my business down. And I was shocked. She was shocked. And I'm like, well, that's what I got. So, and it was, you know, beautifully happened, all of that, and whatever. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. But make space.
Make space.
Make space.
Powerful practice to allow energy to flow in a different way. Yeah. Have a fabulous day.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.